What can you expect from Texas A&M's offense year 2 under Collin Klein in the first full season now with quarterback Marcel Reed running the show? We're not going to do the whole nitty-gritty X's and O's discussion, but I do want us to just have a high-level discussion as to what you can expect from the Aggie offense. Because I'll tell y'all this, man, I like A&M a lot. I've had a lot of people try to tell me to not believe the hype, and a lot of people to tell me, hey, protect your own emotional well-being and don't fall for it. I'm ready to get hurt again. We'll talk about it right now, but if you're an A&M fan, make sure you're subscribed right here. I know a lot of y'all are dialed in over at Texas Aggies, and they do the Lord's work over there, so make sure you have your membership there, but again, make sure you are subscribed here because we do a lot of content around A&M on the video side on this show, the Hard Count, so appreciate y'all in advance for that. So as I was saying, y'all, I am probably one spring game away of watching Marcel Reed just drop a dime in the bucket to a Kevin Concepcion to picking Texas A&M to be a playoff team. Now, I've had him preseason way too early top 10, which, again, we caught some pushback on that. We will redo our playoff predictions when we get closer to the season. But I made this comp to Notre Dame a year ago, right around this time, actually. And I said, man, they're just like that frozen pizza. As more time passes, every time I look at them in the freezer, they look better and better. That's A&M to me right now this year, y'all. The more I think about Marcel Reed and what he could be his second year as the guy, and Mike Elko year 2 and Collin Klein year 2, just like there's all these things where I'm like, gosh, man, I like A&M, and I don't apologize for it. Now, speaking to what they're going to be offensively, they're in a really unique spot, I believe, with the portal additions they made this past offseason and going into, again, another year under Marcel Reed, actually having the keys to the offense from game 1 to where I think they're still going to have the choke you out kind of physicality, MMA style, but they're also going to have the make you pay dimension to the offense. Now, to speak to Marcel Reed, I kind of alluded to this a second ago, but the fact that you have a full offseason now to tailor the offense to your guy is very different than having to install things during the week leading into a game and preparing him to be the starter. They did a good job of that a year ago, but I have to believe now Collin Klein, when he was getting that offense together a year ago and they're game planning and they're putting in the base install, like you are installing what you're installing for a one Connor Wegman. And it didn't work out, and I think some of that's probably on the offensive line as much as Wegman, as much as the receivers, but Marcel Reed, we said it many times, gave you the best chance to win games. And he started multiple games for you during the year. He didn't really get the keys until that LSU game in late October. So the point I'm trying to make here is you now have a full runway to allow Marcel Reed to play to his skill set and for Collin Klein to call the offense to his skill set. And we said it when it was all going down during the year, man. I think Collin Klein wants to call the offense for a dual threat kind of quarterback, like just given his own background of what he was as a player. Collin Klein's a guy that could run it and throw it. Same deal with Marcel Reed. So the fact that he speaks the language and has seen a lot of the same pictures as Marcel Reed is going to see and already has seen, but with a similar skill set of, hey, if I don't like my first and second read, I can take off and run. I think that only helps in this discussion. But to get to a more specific, take on this thing, I think that A&M will probably not depend on Marcel Reed's legs. That's a dangerous game to play. But I do think it will be a priority every single week to have him get some momentum on the ground. Like an ideal stat line for me, if I'm thinking about Marcel Reed and what he could do any given Saturday in games where he's playing all 4 quarters, like the games that are really going to matter for you in SEC play, I'd love to see him be right around the range of, call it 10-ish carries, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the game, and like to see him in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 yards. Now, again, not every game, but in that territory means that you have to account for number 10 when he tucks it and runs. They did a really good job of this, I felt like, funny enough, because it was a loss. But in the Auburn game, that second half where they started to lean a little bit more on him with the misdirection and the jet motion and all those things, what that does to a defense is just something you have to account for. It's something you have to honor, that Marcel Reed, if we don't give the proper precautions in our game plan, he will hurt us. Ask LSU. And credit A&M for pivoting during that game and going to Marcel Reed because LSU had no answers and they couldn't adjust, and that was kind of the way that the whole thing worked. But as much as you have to account for it with number 10, what does that mean? It means you also have less bandwidth to apply to other skill players. We'll talk about Le'Veon Moss here in a second, but I'm just thinking about the explosive plays for A&M. Like if Marcel Reed gets momentum, on the ground, that means that the defense then has more to worry about. And when you have more to worry about, usually you miss a thing here or there. You miss a thing here or there. Usually that's 50 yards downfield for somebody, and you're striking up the band, and good vibes are happening in College Station. Last year, A&M wasn't that explosive. Now, some of that's personnel. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. But both in yards per carry and yards per pass, A&M was right around the 50-ish range nationally. So having a mobile quarterback within this offense should open up a lot more explosive plays for Reed, for the receiving corps, for the running game as a whole. Like that's something that gets me excited, because having a mobile quarterback is, in Marcel Reed's case for this offense, kind of like having a guitar player also be your lead singer. Like if things just go to the dogs during that performance, you got a dude who's got vocals, can carry the melody. If we don't have the deep passing game we want to have on that given Saturday, Marcel Reed can buy some time with his legs, can ad-lib to get guys open downfield, can pick up a first down on his own. There's a way to make it work. There's a very much so a make-it-work kind of component that I think A&M is going to have in this offense. I think they'll call it that way for Marcel Reed here in 2025. Now, as much as Marcel Reed is the straw that stirs the drink, Le'Veon Moss coming back, running back for A&M, he is the juice. He is the drink, man. And with all that I just mentioned a second ago of forcing a defense to account for multiple things, anybody that's watched number 8 tote the rock, he's a north and south kind of runner. He's not going to do a whole bunch of dancing in the hole. He's getting to the landmark and hitting it as quickly as possible. And that only caters even further to what I said a second ago. If a defense is trying to account for, is it Marcel Reed on the run? Is it a pass? What are we looking at here? And Le'Veon Moss gets a 2-yard head start on you. Best case, he's got his face mask and your face mask, and you're probably losing that battle if he's got momentum. Worst case, you're out of position and he's out the back door 60-plus yards. Again, the band is playing in College Station. So all that's to say, explosivity in the run game, I think, is going to be a much more prominent factor of this offense because of Marcel Reed, because of how they're going to install it, because of how they're going to try and involve him in the run game, and it's just going to be the high tide that raises all boats. Now, the thing that A&M, I think, was missing a season ago, when Le'Veon Moss was healthy, there was no what I would call exclamation mark kind of playmaker. Because what are exclamation marks? They're punctuation that goes at the end of your sentence. A&M would have a great sentence in what they were doing offensively. You're running the football, kind of had the quick passing game going at times. I mentioned Marcel Reed with his legs now ad nauseum throughout this segment. But there was nobody that was like a true, in my estimation at least, like go-to number one wide receiver. And that's not saying anything of Noah Thomas. I think he did a good job in his role a year ago. But Marcel Reed, he can real deal throw the football. And so A&M going out and getting the Kevin Concepcion from NC State, I think that is an addition, a wrinkle, if you will, that could change the entire complexion of this offense. Because now if you want to try and stack the box, or you want to try and trigger quickly from the second or third level of the defense to try and play the perimeter game, guess what? There is real estate behind you and a matchup on the outside now with Concepcion that is going to give you problems and is going to probably get loose. And if Marcel Reed gives him a good ball, probably going to be, you guessed it, the war hymn playing for the folks in College Station. In addition to that, Terry Bussey, 5-star plus athlete, getting some burn at receiver as well. I think he'll only elevate his game. Going back to Concepcion here, not to jump around too much, he averaged 10 yards a catch his 2 years at NC State. That's a difference-maker kind of stat for you. Like the yards per catch number for A&M was right around 12 as a team last year. That was per catch. They were 7 yards per a pass. I think you're going to see them be a lot closer to that 8.5-ish range. I mean, number 3 in America last year was 9 yards a pass. So if they can be closer to 9, I think A&M is going to be a very, very tough out. Because if they have the physicality in the run game, which we're accounting for, they're more multiple, which is tough for defenses to deal with, and they have the playmakers downfield. Like, I don't know how you line up with A&M, because I still believe now that Mike Elko on the defensive side is going to give you some legitimate fits. I don't care about who they lost. I just trust Mike Elko. Maybe that's blind faith. I think that's just faith in general when you hire a guy who majors in the defensive side of the football. There's a lot of pieces here coming together now that I love about A&M. And I told y'all, I got people behind me just yelling, don't do it. Don't believe. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't buy the hype. Don't get hurt. Essentially, don't put yourself out there. Well, we are filming this on Valentine's Day, where I hope a lot of y'all are putting yourself out there. And we're going to do the very same when we talk about A&M on this show. So a lot on paper we like has to translate to grass. But we are believing in A&M. And I'll tell you what, I'll come in here after the spring game, and if we see what we want to see, we may just take the ultimate leap and put A&M in our playoff when it's time to predict that closer to August. But let me know what you think. Cato on the ones and twos doing everything you see here. For myself, JD PicKell, again, make sure you are subscribed. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We will keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.